Today, Danny and I are going to be starting a new series. We're going to be going over the hierarchy of CrossFit. And if you don't know what that is, imagine a pyramid where nutrition lays the foundation. Then after that, we move on to metabolic conditioning. Then we go into gymnastics. And then after that, on top of that, we have weightlifting and throwing. And then finally, we end with sports. So today we're starting with our foundation, which is nutrition. We have several podcasts on nutrition that you guys can go back and reference. I don't have the episode, sorry about that, but we do have other ones. But today we're going to be going deep into nutrition. And specifically, we're going to talk about the one thing you can be doing with your nutrition to make the biggest impact for both fat loss and muscle gain. And we're going to also be talking about the top 3 things that are killing it. So I think we're actually going to start with the top 3 killers. Danny's on with me. Danny, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome back.
So our first things we're going to get right into, we're going to talk about the 3 big nutrition killers, which is processed food, sugar, and alcohol.
Yep.
So let's start with processed foods. Danny, let's give me a little overview on processed foods and your overall thoughts.
Well, processed foods are everywhere, right? So it's hard to say cut out processed foods because literally everything is pretty much processed to an extent nowadays, right?
Mm-hmm. True.
What you can do is you got to look at the ingredients of the processing, right? See what's in there, what's really added, and then stay away from certain subjects inside of it, right? Is my recommendation. So one of my favorite ones, and we just had this conversation yesterday with Caitlin, was ketchup. Ketchup is loaded with sugar, right?
100%. That's very... It's one thing that I didn't know until recently.
Yeah. So like when you go get regular ketchup, it's I think it's like the second or first ingredient is sugar. Right away, you're just ruining your lifestyle choices right there by having that condiment.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So it's just like processing foods are everything. Like they add different things every year to processing. They make it sound very like elegant and beautiful to trick you, right? Instead of saying instead of saying sugar, they say cane sugar. Or they do different sweeteners or different things. I mean, sugar's a big one for me, but then, think about the wheat, the flour, all these other things that are going in there to maintain the product so it can last longer on the shelf. Mm-hmm. That's not great for your body.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say like the more the processed the food, the worse it's going to be for you.
Yeah.
Right? So right away, that's killing you. Anything that you're eating from most like fast food industry places or you're eating off a shelf, right, that's wrapped in plastic, is probably not the best thing for you.
Yeah, Danny, if you could define processed food in one sentence, what would that be?
The devil.
That's a good one. I like that.
No, I would say processing food would be the amount of steps it takes to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, so taking a whole food and just wearing it down.
Right.
And what a lot of people don't know about processed foods is that the more you process something or the more it goes through like revisions essentially, the more nutrients are taken out of it.
The easiest way to remember this is, have you ever played the game Telephone?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So you start with, Telephone's a child's game where you start with kids and you give them a phrase in the beginning and you pass it through multiple children to the end, right? And by the time you get to the end, 95% of the time, the phrase is completely changed or completely different. And that's the best way to define processed foods to yourself, right? Like, yeah, sure. Bread is taking wheat and flour and mixing it together, but the process it goes through is what changes the whole like steps for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So 30 years ago, it probably was okay to have that, but due to technology advancements, due to like freshness and things to hold, because you have to think like companies are making a product to make money off of. They're not making a product, like, not necessarily to get the best product on the shelf all the time, right? Now, some companies do, some companies don't, but you think about the majority, they might need mass production. 700 plus million Americans in the United States alone need to consume this to make that money, right?
Exactly.
That's just the easiest way to think about it.
And they need to process it in order to make it last longer on the shelf. So
exactly.
The longer shelf life it has,
the less cost.
Exactly. It costs less because it stays on there. So the longer it can stay on the shelf and be purchased, then the better it is for the company.
I only say this because I worked in the beverage industry, if you will. I worked for Coca-Cola for about 8 years when I got out of the military. And I did their fresh juice line, right? I used to work in primarily delivering fresh juices and dealing with the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And the biggest problem they had was the turnover because it lasted only 7 days from the day of delivery, right? So you're like, okay. and they didn't like that. And then they found a way to, by increasing some of the sugar content and taking out like some of the whole juices and doing more of a GMO style, they can make it last 12 to 14 days. And that's what they went to. And over time that got, that had to get accepted by Congress. There was a whole process back in the early 2000s that everyone went through. Like we forget about that, but we don't, the problem with like, not that anything's wrong or right, we don't know. It's just we haven't had any time to test these theories against any kind of data.
Right.
So we don't know if it will negatively affect you or positively affect you, right?
Exactly. And just a brief overview of like why processed foods are bad for you. First off, I'll just kind of go down a list I have on my notes.
Go for it.
I just got my top 5 here. I'm just going to read them off so it's easier. First off, they can cause metabolic disruption, which can interfere with the body's metabolic process. And metabolic is just a fancy word for metabolism. So your ability to use food as a fuel source. The next one is heart health. That one's obvious because it can lead to high cholesterol and blood pressure. And it can affect your heart health, especially later on in life. Gut health is another one. It's difficult to digest processed foods a lot of times. So it can cause just digestive problems. Immune response, it can lower your immunity. And then also your skin health, which is not necessarily like a huge thing that people think about, but regular consumption can lead to skin issues.
I think you're right. Those are like the perfect top 5. I mean, skin issues are becoming a bigger issue now. I think as we're in the last like 1 or 2 years, I would say a lot of people are realizing that they're having allergic reactions to certain adverse effects of foods, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the gut health is a big one. I mean, 23 years ago, like, gluten sensitivity was not a big issue.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a huge issue now.
It's a huge issue now. So like, think about what changed in 20 years plus, right? Is the way we process food.
Oh yeah. 100%.
So, I mean, if you just start looking through the data and scrolling through this stuff, you're like, wow, okay, there must be something going on here.
Yeah.
Right. But it tastes great. Like it's hard to say no to certain foods, right?
They make it taste great on purpose.
Exactly. And then
they sell it.
Yeah, like I mean, if you look at a lot of processed foods, the number one ingredient is sugar. And not, like sugar is great. I love sugar. It's going to be so good, but too much of it is so bad for you. So when you think about your heart health or your metabolism, right, or gaining calories, right, maybe you should be reading those labels, right? Maybe you should be looking at that. If you can't, and like the thing I teach my children, the thing I do in my house, if I can't read the word that is in the ingredients, then we can't have it.
Yeah.
Because if if it's like neocentric polysaturated something, right? You're like, okay, that's way too long.
Yeah.
What does that even mean? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I can't figure it out and it doesn't have simple ingredients, it's way too processed for me to be consuming, especially my children.
Yeah.
Right?
Before we move on, let's give some examples of processed foods that people don't even think that they're processed foods. So Danny, why don't you give me your top 3 of like foods that are processed, but many people think that they aren't.
Well, I mean, the biggest one to me would be bread, right? I think bread is like
a big one.
I think people underestimate how processing of the bread would be for the top one. I think the second one would be some of those packaged meals or packaged meats that you can get from like Costco or you can get from like your grocery store. I think if you really read through the ingredients and see how much processing goes through those things to keep them intact, I think it would shock you.
Yeah.
Right. Totally. And then I think my third one is any kind of dessert or treat that you enjoy. Right.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Candy, gummies,
any kind of sweet thing. Okay. Those are great examples. And so we do have to move on to sugar soon, but
good transition.
But let's move on. Let's chat really quick on like, what's something that someone can do today to avoid processed foods? What would like the number one piece of advice you would give someone?
Number one piece of advice would be to try to make everything yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Or look at it, and I keep it like a real simple, keep it really simple, right? If I look at the ingredient label and there's 6 or less ingredients, then I feel very confident about eating that food.
Yeah.
Right. If it has more than 6 or I can't read them, then I would skip it.
Yeah.
Think about Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt, something we eat at the gym every day. Everyone loves Greek yogurt. If you look at the back, right, and you look at Feo, which is one of the better Greek yogurt brands, it has 4 ingredients on the back.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at some of the other Greek yogurt brands like Yoplait, right? Yeah, I was like, what's the other one? Yoplait. I didn't even get it, but if you look at the back of it, it has 7 ingredients listed,
Oh, yeah, it
and the
has so
third,
much
I think the
crap in
third
it.
one is sugar
Yeah.
inside of it. So like just making like simple choices like that. Yes, does it suck to eat plain Greek yogurt? 100%. But you could add fruit. You could add. There's other things you could put into there.
I like adding protein powder.
Right, protein powder. So you can see that I've already made a Yoplait essentially. I know it's not convenient in time, and that's why we reach for it, but switching it over right there, boom, we have it and it's ready to go. So making stuff that you love doesn't mean you can't eat things that you don't love. But making yourself, like if I love French fries, okay, well, cutting up the potatoes myself and air frying them with less oil is probably more healthier than going to get somewhere else.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you don't have an air fryer, it's definitely an underrated piece of equipment.
Change your life.
That you can get. Go on Amazon, they're like $100, so totally worth it. All
Small
right,
plug
perfect.
right there.
I love it, Danny. That leads us perfectly into number 2. So we got 2 more to go before I get into our main stuff. So let's go into sugar now. So brief overview of sugar, insulin resistance, mental health, inflammation, bone health, and immune function. Those are the top 5 reasons why overdoing on sugar is actually bad for you. So excessive intake can lead to insulin resistance, which is a precursor towards type 2 diabetes.
Type 2 diabetes. Yeah, the number one thing, if you think about it, is type 2 diabetes coming up in America right there. So I would say to look at your sugar intake, right? Like a lot of times we don't read sugar intake through the top of it. That's probably, I think, one of the, unless you're diabetic, I don't think people are looking, or over the age of 55, I don't think people are looking at the sugar content in their food.
No, it's really easy to overlook this.
Yeah, I mean,
I overlook this all the time.
Yeah, I don't think I ever used to look at it before I got serious about what I ate. And one of the problems with that is sugar's in everything, right? It's in things you don't think it's in.
Yeah.
And that's what the problem is. So like a lot of condiments like mayo, ketchup, ranch dressing, right? Things that we enjoy eating, salad dressings, like stuff like that on the side, sugar's in there.
Starbucks.
Starbucks is, yeah. But it's in everything. It's not just, it's in the regular syrup that you're going to get from everywhere else, you know? And so one of the things they've started doing is switching out of sugar. I mean, listen, if you're listening to this podcast and you've done CrossFit and you've listened to anything CrossFit, there is a whole debate against Coke and sugar and CrossFit. So, I mean, we'd just be beating your head into the stone. I just say sugar's in everything. You should literally look at how much sugar you're consuming through a day, because a good example is ketchup. That's the one I go to the most because I used to eat ketchup with everything. My kids love it. I eat it with their food too, right? And I used to put probably I'm telling you half a cup within some of my meals right there, right? And you look at a serving size of ketchup and it's a tablespoon for a serving, right? Inside 1 tablespoon of Hunt's ketchup, there's 18 grams of sugar.
Yeah.
Now you're eating 5 of those in a meal right there. You know what I mean? Do the math. 5 times 18, that's triple digits of sugar content you had in one meal. You didn't even realize you're having it.
Yeah, and it's so easy to overeat on that too because it is a sauce. It goes down very easily.
And the problem with overdoing the sugar is you're not getting the fiber from it.
Yes.
Right? So fruits are great for you, right? Because they give you sugar, but they give you fiber to help digest that insulin and kick it out. When you're over consuming like that, it's a bad news for you.
Yeah, it's really important to also look at, there's a difference between just sugar content and then added sugars, which people don't, that it'd be deceiving in labels too, because it's there's X amount of added sugar, and then there's also
sugar alcohol
on top of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Sugar alcohol is another way that they hide how much sugar content is actually in it.
They'll actually have they'll do these things where they add sweeteners to them to make them drink. We'll add Splenda or Sativia, right, which are zero sugar sweeteners, but then they'll have sugar alcohols inside of it as well, and that actually bumps up the content. But they can separate them, by law, you can separate them out and not call it sugar.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's also important to note about artificial sweeteners is that your body will react the exact same way towards an artificial sweetener than it will to sugar. So it doesn't matter just because it says sucralose in it, even though
sucralose is just sugar.
Yeah,
it's liquid sugar.
You're going to react to the exact same way. Your body doesn't know the difference.
Yeah, your body, it's still consuming it the same way. Sure, you're not getting cane sugar. I mean, the whole natural cane sugar, whatever it is, right? That's probably the most processed thing in the world is the way they process sugar to get it into the drinks, the foods, the condiments.
Drinks are deceiving too.
Drinks are super deceiving, right? Because you'd say sugar-free soda, and you're like, oh, okay, that looks.
It's loaded with artificial sweeteners.
So, but again, your body is just consuming that amount and thinks it's fine, right? And sure, you're probably like, you're like, hey, I'm super healthy, I'm going through it, I'm doing my fitness and things like that, and your scale is probably not changing. It's probably the things that you're not thinking about that you're adding into your diet.
Yeah.
The drinks, the condiments, the side things that you don't like. You're probably counting your macros. You're probably looking at like, I'm eating this, I'm doing so good for myself.
Yeah.
And then you literally you ruined it because the drink you had, like the tea or
I would say sauces and drinks are the most the easiest way to like slip.
Right. And that's what I would say. So like just looking at it, I would say, sugar's good. I mean, it's good to have some every once in a while. We need a little bit here and there, right? The best place to get sugar from is places that have high contents of fiber. Fruits are number one, right? And going through those pieces. So like pineapple, apples, grapes, things like that, right? That's where you're going to like eating those whole fruits is what's going to get you. If you get them in a juice and you didn't juice it yourself, most likely it's going to be high content of sugar added to make it sweeter.
Yeah.
So,
perfect. Let's wrap things up here. Like what would be, again, like your number one piece of advice for someone trying to cut back on sugar? What would you tell them?
Stay away from it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I would say like look at the back of the label, like keep things are going to have sugar in it. You want to keep any kind of condiment should have 5 grams or less amount of sugar inside per serving, right? That's how you know the condiments. Some of them should have 0, right? If you get the right brand, but like 5 grams or less is a good amount to look at because that's not overdoing it in terms of adding. I would say stay away from anything that says sugar free because most likely they've added something else to it, right? And just keep it safe. There's plenty of other sweet things out there if you have a sweet tooth to like try and get these things going, right?
Yeah. I think my number one piece of advice too would be drink water instead. No, seriously, like you'd be very surprised.
Sparkling water, like have a Topo Chico, have a Liquid Death, like those things will fill you up and they make you satisfied versus if you're tired of drinking regular water, like have a sparkling water. There's nothing in sparkling water but carbonation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right then and there, that takes care of a sweet tooth for a lot of people, right?
It helps me a lot.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. I think that covers everything on sugar. So let's move on to our last one of my favorites, which is alcohol. So alcohol is something that has loaded with empty calories. And this is actually the number one thing. Well, not the number one thing, but this is something I see very common when people are struggling to lose weight, that they're eating really healthy 5 days out of the week, but on the weekends they slip up a bit and they have some drinks, they have some beers on the weekends, or they have like 2 or 3 glasses of wine. But people don't realize how many calories and also backtracking how much sugar is in a lot of these alcoholic beverages. So I'll just quickly go through my 5 bad things about alcohol. So first off, neurological effects. Okay, so it can have prolonged negative effects on the brain, and it can affect memory and cognition. Digestive health is another one. It can irritate the digestive system. Muscle health as well, because it can hinder muscle development. And just hinder your fitness progress in general. Heart health, because just like it does with processed foods and sugar, it can develop heart problems, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, all that fun stuff. And then finally, hormonal imbalance, which I think is the most important one. Specifically, it can really lower testosterone, which is not what we want, especially when we're working out.
Yeah. I have nothing bad to say about alcohol. No, I mean, you're right. You're on the right track with everything. And what I think what people would say to you in this terms is like, well, I want that neurological dysfunction, right? Like I want that. Like, cool.
That's so true.
What Matt's trying to say is like, overuse is where I think we all get in trouble, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to tell someone. I mean, like the hardest thing to tell people now is don't have drinks, right? And I used to say no all the time. I mean, if you're really serious, if you got to lose weight, if you have any kind of conditions, alcohol can't be a part of the factor at all.
No, absolutely.
The one thing you didn't talk about too, like, is recovery. Like, drinking alcohol on a regular basis messes with your sleep, right? It is it leads to insomnia for some people. Mm-hmm. It leads to upset digestion or heartburn, which causes like people to struggle with sleeping as well. So, I mean, and it also causes with your bladder too. Like, a lot of UTIs come from alcohol consumption as well. So like because you think you're hydrated because you're peeing it all out through your liver, but you're not hydrated. You're actually dehydrating yourself while you're having this beer, this wine, this spirit or whatever it is, right?
100%.
And you're not having water to go with it. So in terms of that, if your goal is to lose weight and get healthy, alcohol just can't be in there at all, right? I mean, I think moderation is always key. I always tell people now, I was like, if you're going to have drinks or have things going, you need to be in moderation of where your life is. And what does moderation mean? Like 1 to 2 drinks a week.
Yeah.
Like, period. Like,
I think a lot of people are on the 1 to 2 drinks a day.
Yeah. Well,
train.
Or they get into the train where it's like, I mean, there's been this whole push of like red wine's healthy for your heart, right? And it's like, okay. In this small testing group that they tested, yes, it did prove.
So was exercise.
Right, yeah.
But no one exercises every day, do they?
That's where you have a problem with it. It's like you took a small batch of people, right, in their testing side, and you went through them, and that's who you're telling 700 million people, like, oh, it's really good for you in this small group batch. Well, this other big batch did not have the same results.
Yes.
So you're having these issues like back and forth with it. So I would tell you, like, yeah, moderation is great because at the end of the day, it's like America has proven that they want to drink, right? Prohibition didn't work. So like we want to drink, right? You got to have it in moderation, like 1 to 2 drinks a week. And that's basically where you got to live right there. I mean, everything you said is correct. There's so many more negatives than there are positives.
Yeah.
Right. Like the overall digestive health of your system, like you're not going to be able to digest the foods correctly because your body's going to be like having such issues with it, with your liver and with your bladder. So like your body can't even process like the food like it should. Even if you eat 99% healthy and you have drinks on the weekend, that 1% is enough to derail the whole thing.
Yep.
Right. For everything. So just for like, I would say recovery and sleep purposes and muscle growth, it's just not worth it. It can't be a fact. If you are serious about getting like, hey, if people come in the gym every time, they tell us, I want to lose 20 pounds before this date. And the first thing I say is like, check your water, right? And then check your alcohol content because you can't have that in there, right? Yeah. And that's where you usually lose people. They're like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, it's hard. Like it sucks.
It is very hard. And especially because, I mean, if you're drinking heavily or just like more than normal, before you got into your fitness journey, you have to undo all that stuff. So every time that, that you are, consuming more alcoholic beverages, then, it's just, you're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah. You're basically like, you're doing everything correct. Like I said, 99% of the stuff could be 100% correct. And then let's say you go out and have a cocktail at night, go out and drink or whatever, right? Yeah. You just ruined the whole day. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you just undid all that work.
You went from an A+ to a D- in like in a term of an hour of like going and drinking. If you like grades, right? Well,
I think also it's a mentality that people think that while they're working out that they're actually getting fitter, but it's actually in the recovery. And so if you're messing up your recovery by drinking alcohol, then you're just you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, sure, it's not going to affect your working out or your fitness. It won't. Yeah, objective. You're absolutely right. I mean, I've seen people drink all night. I mean, I've known a few, and I've been that person to go out and party till like 3 or 4 in the morning, come to the gym and have a great workout.
Oh yeah,
right.
I've done that too.
But then like afterwards, like I can't sleep for crap. Like my body's so sore, I can't do anything. Like you know what I mean, like. Because it used to be like, hey, we'll go party and then we'll go to the gym and sweat it out. That used to be like mindset back in the day. And it's like, you don't factor in the sleep. You don't factor in the recovery. Like, sure, you PR'd your bench press, for example, right? You come back and now it's like your biceps and your chest are so sore for 3 days versus 2. You can't do anything with it. You know what I mean?
And even if you don't feel it, your body is still fighting to recover.
Yeah.
Like you're just, you
feel it.
Making
like,
it harder for yourself.
I think people live in denial of what they feel. Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like if I'm sore from a workout, I would assume it's from the workout, right? If I'm excessively sore as the days go on, I'm never going to think, well, how's my sleep? How is my, like, oh, should I have had that 3 glasses of wine last night when I went out? Right. It's like, that stuff's not in your head because you're like, that's not the problem. The problem must have been I was lifting wrong. The problem must have been I went too hard in the workout.
I just lifted too heavy, too hard.
Because it's easier to blame those things versus like, you don't want to blame what you love. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if alcohol wasn't so fun and like so much like good times to go with, then it would be an easy thing to give up. Yeah. Right. Just like sugar. If sugar didn't taste amazing and being so many things that we grew up in loving, then it would be easy to give up. The fact that it's not is where it's like that's where people draw lines in the sand. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, I can't. Whoa.
And thank you for bringing that up. That's a great point. And I think that this kind of sums up the entire negative part of this podcast really well is that people forget that your brain responds to processed food, sugar, and alcohol the same way it would respond to drugs.
True.
You get that dopamine hit.
Yeah, they're mind alternating states,
Yes.
right? Which is what a drug is, right? So it's alternating your perception, your reality, things like that. It's just like it has it's if you told someone like, hey, eating this processed thing right here would be the same as taking meth, you'd laugh at them, right? But essentially, it will do the same effects on your body.
Just over a very long.
It just takes a longer amount of time.
It takes a lot longer.
Yeah. So instead of like a drug doing it within a few weeks or months, right? Eating this processed food is going through decades, right? Like, sure, in your 20s and 30s, you don't develop heart disease necessarily, right? When do you develop it? Like your 50s and 60s.
Exactly.
That's when all the clotted arteries and all the processing comes out to the end right there. And then it's too late to fix the problem that far along the line, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, when there's no direct punishment, or I guess there's no direct consequence immediately from making these bad choices between processed food, sugar, and alcohol. There's no immediate direct consequence for it. It's something that adds up over time, and that will come back to bite you in the ass later.
That's true. It's a long period. Like it is something. And trust me, it is a hard thing to do to yourself, to be like, wake up and be like, I'm going to give up everything I love. Right. In terms of like, I had to do it when I started like getting serious about competing. Like I went through a 30-day cleanse of everything where I ate no processed food. I cooked. If I didn't cook it myself, or I couldn't cut it, I couldn't eat it. And that was a really hard thing to do with my work, working out. And it took a long time to get through it. And actually, it went from I had to extend it past 30 days. I had to go into like 75 days to make it, because I was like, I can't go back.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I can't go back. And it took that long, but it took, and I didn't see the results instantly. Like I won't lie and say like, oh, in the first couple of weeks, I felt amazing. I saw no results right away, but I trusted the process because that's what I bought into, right?
Yeah. Sometimes, in fact, you'll even feel worse.
Yeah.
Before it gets better.
Oh man, the first couple of days were so bad.
Yeah, it's like withdrawal.
Yeah, you're like jonesing for some stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like jonesing for like stuff I didn't even want.
Yeah.
And so like you go through it, and then after the 75 day, it becomes easier, and then I got through a lot of it, and then I started to be able to like understand choices like portion size and things like that, and what to read and what to look for in terms of like if I was out eating my lunch at work or something, right? I didn't bring a lunch. So it became a process for that position. But then I started like when it rebounded back down and the results came, they came really fast, and they were like it was like a wave that just hit.
Yeah.
All of a sudden one day you just wake up and you're like, you don't even recognize yourself in the mirror. You're like, holy crap, who is this person?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like that's what it took though. But it took that long of sacrifice and going through it all. Right.
Yeah. So if you could summarize just in one sentence, if someone's trying to avoid alcohol, or not necessarily eliminate it, but at least cut back, what would be your number one piece of advice for them?
My number one piece of advice would be, don't keep it around, right? If you buy a bottle of wine, like get the small bottles, things like that. Like think about keeping small portions around, because if I buy a case of beer, for example, and I want 2 beers for the weekend, if I have 10 more sitting there, it's a lot easier for myself to fall in the habit of like, I'll have 3, I'll have 4.
Remove the temptation.
So remove the temptation from me, right? It's okay like to go to the store and buy a single serving thing that you want that day. Right. And then just be done with it and move it. Like that's usually what I do in my time, is like, I'll go buy a single serve, so I don't do more than what I want or what I think I should do. Because if it's just there, it's very easy to fall in that trap. Like, well, I'll have one more. Oh, I'll do one. You know what I mean? Like you talk yourself into it. There's no peer pressure. It's internal. You're like, you just talk to you're like, well, I feel like everyone wants me to have one more, and no one's in the house with you. And you're like, what the hell am I doing? Yeah. So I would say like limit the exposure to it. Like limit the temptation to everything that you're having. If you can't eliminate it, period, and that's too much, the best thing would be to replace it with something. Yeah. Right. If you could replace it, like if I like having a beer, for example, well, having a sparkling water would be a better replacement. I'm still getting carbonation. I'm still getting the taste, or a non-alcoholic beer. Yeah. Like I would replace, take the alcohol out of it and go have a non-alcoholic beer. And then eventually it's easier to be like, well, I don't really love this. I'm not getting any effects from it. Right. Yeah. And then you start to ease yourself.
It just takes some time.
Yeah. It just takes time and commitment. Right. And I would tell you the second thing would be have a support group with you. Yeah. If you want to eliminate anything, sugar, carbs, whatever it is, right? Support group, number one. You got to get someone with you that's going to hold you accountable and be like, don't do it. You know what I mean? Like talk you down from the ledge, right?
Yep.
And that's what you need. And in all seriousness, I know it sounds hilarious if you're listening to this and be like, that sounds like an AA thing, but it's real, man. If you want to lose weight and cut things out of your system, you gotta have someone to hold you accountable and be like, don't do it.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Let's move on to, I really like that. Let's move on to our final piece, which is, so we now covered our top 3 things of like things you want to avoid. Now it's going to do the one thing that will make the biggest impact that will actually help you with all 3 of these areas if you're struggling with it. So we're going to talk about protein. So protein matters, and protein is the superhero of macronutrients. So it plays a crucial role in building and repairing tissues. It supports immune function. It's essential for the production of enzymes and hormones. And it goes way beyond that. It's a metabolic powerhouse. So it pretty much what that means is it ignites your body's calorie burning engine, and it revs up your metabolism, helping you torch any extra pounds and maintaining a healthy weight. And like I said earlier, it helps build muscle. So it's definitely the main macronutrient that we need to be focusing on, and actually is the macronutrient that helps pretty much make everything else a little bit easier when you focus on protein.
Yeah, let's sum this up. Like, I'll make it even simpler for you, right? Hey, you want to lose weight, you want to gain muscle, you want to lose fat, best thing you can do is up your protein intake.
100%.
Period, right? I think the biggest thing everyone out there in the world is doing is under eating their protein content.
Yeah, that's the most common thing I see as well. Whenever I talk to someone and I ask them, walk me through your day of eating. Yeah. And the number one thing I see is that they're not eating enough protein, like right off the bat.
Or they don't have a clue how much protein they're eating.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they'll just be like, oh, I had a salad. I was like, what'd you have in the salad? Like, I had some chicken breast. Okay. That's probably about 4 to maybe 6 ounces of chicken breast.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, right? So I was like, 4 ounces of a lean chicken breast is like 22 grams of protein. Like, not even that much. Like, that's really not a whole lot at that moment, right? And that's if it's like super lean and top. Most times it's like around 18 grams, right? So if you get a Chick-fil-A salad, which is, I love Chick-fil-A salads, right? It's like 16 grams of protein for that Chick-fil-A salad right there. Boom. That's nothing. Like, that's literally like less than 3 eggs right there. So everyone out there listening, I can guarantee you're probably under eating, right? Like, number one. And the biggest concept I know this from is because the second I've worked with anyone and tell them how much protein they eat, their first response is, that's too much protein. There is no negative effect on your body from too much protein, right? Like, there's been no proof ever designed in any study, and it's been studied about is too much, right? It's just not there. The best thing about eating proteins, like, I'll break it down to you. Number one, there are 3 things you can look at that are going to benefit your day right away, right? If I up my protein right away, number one, I'm going to feel fuller. So all those cravings I'm having for junk food, i.e. chips, cookies, snacks, that goes away. That's gone, right? Number two, I'll like my choices on eating certain things later in the night, right? A lot of people say I have late night snacking or I have like late night cravings. Well, dude, if I'm eating 3 meals of high quantity protein a day,
the cravings will go away.
That goes away. You're so
easily.
full.
Yeah, you're full.
Like,
you don't even want to eat anything.
Like, you have the hardest time eating, right?
It's hard to eat enough protein, honestly.
That's what, and then
that's the biggest thing is it's really hard to eat enough protein in a day.
Yeah. And then number 3, you're going to start having more energy than you realize. So if you're addicted to like caffeine and I got to have like X amount of coffees a day, well, if I'm eating enough protein in my diet, you'll start to realize that you're like, because your metabolism is burning at the right rate of speed, that your energy level is actually higher than you notice.
Yeah.
So that afternoon lull that everyone has where they dip down and they all feel tired, right? It's actually going to start bouncing back a little bit as you start to progress through these things.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing that people don't think about protein. They usually think about protein as a muscle building macronutrient when it's just as much of an energy nutrient.
Yeah, because protein does wonders for your body. It ups your metabolism. It regulates your dieting, right? Or like when you need to eat. It keeps you full longer. It's the building block to everything. I guarantee, like, the average person needs to be eating an average man, right? You're somewhere between 180 to 200 grams of protein a day.
Oh,
easily. Like, average female, you're probably somewhere between like 150 to 170, right?
And the chances of gaining weight from eating too much protein is very
well. That's what I'm getting into.
Low thing.
That's to maintain your weight where it is now.
Yeah.
If you want to gain muscle, we have to go.
You have to go
above
over that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, think about that. So if you're a guy and you weigh 200 pounds right now and you're eating like 180 grams of protein, you're probably losing weight, losing muscle. You're probably toning out a little bit.
You're immediately losing muscle.
Right.
I made
So-
this mistake.
Yeah. So it's like you have to go above that to gain muscle and to build. So it's like when people tell me it's so hard to do these things, like, no, it's like you're not prioritizing because you don't like certain things or you're afraid of certain things.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so I would tell you guys, if you're out there looking, number one, right, look for the leanest proteins possible. Right.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
Lower the fat, the better.
Yeah. The lower, that's all that means. Lower the fat, the better. So, I mean, if you love bacon, probably not the best one to eat, but
Avoid bacon.
Yeah.
It's mostly fat.
it's mostly fat. But I mean, like, look at like ground beef, ground turkey.
Yep.
The lean, they tell you the lean percentage. That's what that 97.3, 95.
Yeah.
Most.
I would always say shoot for 93% or above.
Right.
Yeah,
So
or
I would
higher.
or higher. And there's 99.1%.
Yeah. like I've 98% is my favorite.
Yeah. Like ground turkey is 99.1%.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense. But like, look at that. Like, and look at what you can eat with those things. So go leanest protein possible, right?
Right.
Go if you eat out or you go like you're like, well, I can't take my lunch because I'm a traveling businessman or I work in this office. It's like, cool. When you go to lunch, get the highest. Look at the menu. They have to list the calories. They have to list the protein intake. It's by law that they have to put it on there. Look at the highest protein content you can get, right? And be like, okay, I'll have this thing because it has 20 plus grams of protein. So good.
Right.
Look for the highest thing. You're looking for 20 grams plus of protein per meal. That's what you should be looking at, right? Like anything that is going to do really well for your dieting.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to
100%.
want to finish the whole plate of food.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be so full.
Yeah.
Right. In times that. So I would tell you guys like that's what I would be like looking for in terms of protein content.
Yeah. Awesome. And I do have some scientific support for this that
Oh,
I want
science.
to, I did my research. So I'm going to read it off because it's technical, but it's very short. And I just want everyone to know this is that
Hit 'em with it.
A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that higher protein diet increases energy expenditure and enhances fat oxidation. So that's fat burning.
Fat burning.
Fat
Boom.
burning. Essentially, like that's what it means, leading to improved weight management. And the study observed that participants who consumed higher protein diet experienced greater satiety, which is fullness, and thermogenic response, resulting in an increased calorie burning and fat loss.
So let's break that down real quick. Boom, right there. Increasing your protein content is a natural fat burner for your metabolism.
Nailed
and
it.
Fat burning. Boom, science.
Boom. And you'll gain muscle. So it's the best of both worlds.
It's the building block of muscle. Oh, by the way, it has amino acids, which your body is essential, right?
Yes.
So there we go. So you're building muscle, losing fat, keeping your metabolism high, and having energy, all by improving your protein content.
Awesome.
Nailed it.
I love it.
Done.
So everyone, we have a special gift for you. If you're listening to this podcast, we weren't able to get in some of the details, but we do have a guide for you that we want to give away. We have everything from, we have the best protein sources, our top 10 protein sources. We have actually a protein calculator in the guide itself. So that way you can kind of figure it out on your own. If you're interested in the guide, follow us on social media at Red Wolf CrossFit. If you don't have social media, then feel free to email me directly, Matt, M-A-T-T, at redwolfcrossfit.com, and just put the subject protein guide, and I will send you the guide for free. It's a PDF file. Again, if you do follow us on social media, just comment on any of our posts and I'll see it and just say protein guide in the comments, and I'll make sure to DM you, get your email address, and I'll send you the PDF file. Any closing thoughts, Danny?
Yeah, that is a great, if you guys don't have that tool, you should take it. It's very simple. A lot of people tell us, well, it's too hard to figure these things out. Well, Matt did all the work for you guys. It's literally page by page. You just read page by page and you follow the instructions and boom, you're going to be good to go. So,
exactly. Like, I mean, the plan of this podcast was to go into protein sources and how to calculate it, but that's actually going to be very boring. So I figured you can read this at your own pace through the guide. I don't know how many pages it is. Let me pull it up really quick.
Well, so many people hung up already once we got villainized the alcohol. They're like, I'm out.
Exactly. I have no idea how many pages it is, but it's a very comprehensive guide focusing only on protein.
And it's free.
It's 100% free. So please, if you want it, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's wrap things up, shall we? Thanks for coming on, Danny. This was a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful, please leave us a 5-star review so we know to make more content just like this. Don't forget to follow us on social media and comment protein guide so I can send you the free guide. And until next time, good luck. Have fun.
Nailed it.